I finished Soukano and I was having a great time in the common route and quickly decayed throughout the routes, but I'll talk about that later on. I'll be spoiling here and there after the first bit, so if you care about that, then I feel like I'd give this an 8 if it was just like the common route, and then like low 7 with the routes, and that's still considered like the common route, right? The pacing is a lot better in the common route, and it makes sense considering they don't have to handle like 4 different versions of a single year in the common like it does in the routes. Really, they could have made the routes longer, and it probably fixed a bunch of things I don't really like about it. The title is about Toshiki, a writer that's been in a slump for a while. He's been trying to get over it, but he ends up vomiting every time he tries to write. So he's going to this new school that focuses on the arts, and he's thinking maybe that the inspiration would somehow fix his mental block. The title sets the characters as creators, and they place a line between what they call as creators and what they call makers. The makers thing barely gets talked about, but basically it's all about the passion, where the difference in quality between the two can be massive. It's more about if they're trying to make something that would be like, oh, this is my best work yet, or just a product that'll sell well. On a more extreme side, it's more to delineate if you're a person that's ready to do some drastic shit that's a normal person wouldn't consider just to make their best work even better than it was before. But really, it rarely hits that point, and it's more like, hey, I'm going to completely redo this piece because I got this new idea and it's going to make the finale so much better, but it's going to take a lot of work with a massive rewrite to the setup, but the deadline is right over there and it's really tight, so they're skipping classes or sleeping to get it all done right. It's only in the climax sections or in the true route where it can go beyond that, and I'll get to that in a bit. Anyway, the reason why Toshiki is in this slump is kind of around that as well, where one writer made something similar to one of his previous works and it doubted him so hard that he doesn't know if he'll ever make anything that at that level, and it just crushes him like, holy shit, what can I ever do that beats this? Because for him, why bother even making something if this guy's already made something outside of his reach anyway? It's like he's just gonna get better, and even if I do improve, it's never gonna be around his level anymore. This is fucked up. So like doing anything else would just make him like a maker, and he refuses to be that. So it's one of those things where he eventually realizes what's ailing him after several chapters, and everything in between is him either removing something off the checklist or just slightly improving his condition. The common route is around 8 chapters long. The common route splits its focus between Toshiki's issues and the specific character the section is about. This works and shits the bed at the same time. It makes the pacing for how these characters interact with each other and how they progress as friends as something more really well done. But by the time you eventually hit the point of no return and hit a route, what the character's about is already handled, and some random drama has to be forced in and like unfold to make the route even move forward. It's like, alright, this is kind of boring now. It could have just been like an after story. So the main 4 outside of Toshiki is Aisa, Kiriha, Yumemi, and Erena. Each chapter covers part of what they're going through and what type of wall they're trying to plow through, whilst Toshiki's trying to solve his own shit. Aisa is the main. She gets covered in the first chapter and is around for every chapter, but she really only gets focused on like the first chapter and all of her stuff when everything else gets unlocked, or like I guess the chapter right before the common route ends. But even though that's more of like a shared chapter. Kiriha is the popular voice actress that can't understand the role given to her and is pissing her off. Yumemi is a shut-in and a popular like artist online. She gets shoved into like the little sister role for most of the time, even though they're cousins. Erena is kind of a subdued weirdo, and that's completely trash at writing like smut, even though that's what she really wants to write about. Technically, the common route is split into 2, from the start to like the end of chapter 4, and then the rest up to where you decide your route, right? I will shield the first 4 chapters, they were fucking great, and I got what I want from the title from all those 4 chapters. Sure, nothing gets resolved, but it's enough, and you could even leave it open-ended and make your own conclusions, like, hey, I think this is what's gonna happen, and it'll be fine. And it's not like, oh, the next 4 chapters are bad at all. They're not. They're basically the setup for the routes and what's happening afterward, what will like normally be called like the climax if it was a different VN. So it's just like, it's very long after stories, I guess, until like the true route. As an example, Yumemi wasn't even really handled as a love interest in the first 4 sections. You knew she was going to be one due to like, oh, she's in the opening video and she's in the cover, but at the point, she really felt like, hey, she's an important support character that would be used for another route, and that's it. She probably had the best pacing until like hitting her own route. I was actually expecting some kind of like fake out, and the real character route would be like Erena. It would have been really funny. I guess the only reason I'd go against this, like, hey, it concentrate on what would be kind of the same thing that was happening between Toshiki and Erena's route. It's like, alright, you can't have the same route twice, even though it'd be like reversed. It was like, same thing, I'm not doing that, I guess. But otherwise, it would have been a better route. Erena is probably the best route out of the 4, which is kind of funny considering I felt it did a better job than the true route a lot of times. It's one of those things where both are concentrating on the theme and how it can be taken too far, just that the angle of how to respond to their questions are different. If you read all of Musicus, it has like the same kind of energy to it. I think Musicus did a better job of it, but at the same time, outside of like one of the final routes being in your face, the rest were like more subtle than the ones here. I'm not really a fan of Erena half the time. That would be Kiriha. Like if you're considering just based on the route and what they're going for, Erena's beating everybody else for me, right? And then it's Aisa's alternate ending that unlocks the true route. They call it the bad ending, and I get why it's called that in terms of like her own viewpoint, but it's also kind of retarded. I'll talk about that later in the spoilers. It's not gonna be... I don't think it's gonna be long. Anyways, the other two routes are fine and are closer to something you expect from like the slice of life title. They're good, but I wouldn't consider them anything that's trying to focus on the theme for more than a few minutes. Like I think Yumemi specifically was like maybe 30 minutes at most. And even then, I think that I'm pushing that. In terms of characters, my favorite is Kiriha. It's not a new concept, but it's still refreshing to get like this purely logical asshole character. She knows what she wants, is trying to work for. Her route is probably the most dull in terms of like what the theme is going for, and it worked better in like a different title because it's more of like a social issues than anything to do with like throwing yourself away to improve your art and crap like that. It's not like there was none of that, but it was taken care of like most of it in the comment section. So like, okay, what are you gonna do here, right? Funny enough, I was never really comparing this to Musicus until I start talking about it. But yeah, her route is kind of similar to the one in New Musicus. It's also the one I cared about the least too for the most part. So really the character is what carries her sections. The plot was just fine. Then it's Aisa and Yuina. Yuina isn't even a main character. She just got punted because it'd be like too much of the same thing. She's too close to what Toshiki is about, but without his like radical perspective on what a creator is about. The funny thing is that it's technically something Musica went for as well with Yako, where instead of forcing some kind of sacrifice, Toshi would kill part of his own character to make things work. So it'd be closer to what happened with the minor cast like Mei or Erika. Like it could work here, they just didn't go for it. Honestly, it would have worked great in the sense that it tied the main cast to the previous aspiring creators he meets or like works with or even works close together. But yeah, it's still like the side cast, so I guess they don't want to pay attention to too much or like put too much focus on it. Instead, you get Yumemi, who is perfectly a fine character, but just works better as one of like the support characters. She could have been used as like a kindling for Yuina, but either it end up in like a Yako type of scenario where she ultimately still fails, and you'd go against Toshiki's ruthlessness where he'd pick the better creator over his own feelings, or it'd go against one of the themes where you're never going to beat the genius if you don't sacrifice everything else for your art. So Yuina is just a character that would have worked better in a different title. She's just kind of fucked over here. And it's why Yumemi works better considering she had nothing and then built something close to a normal life only to be asked to be sacrificing it all again to gain back her like her genius art aptitude back. It's kind of a dumb idea where instead of a mental block, she's the only good when she's like in a mental hellhole. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that could be interesting. If you're counting the side characters, I'd guess I'd also put like Himeko on the top. Not as a character itself, but her thought process and how cutthroat she can be to see like the results that she wants. There's a lot of prominent side characters, but they're not given enough to stand out. It's enough for them to be compared to the main cast and to see how the main cast shines more in specific ways and how most of the time what you want isn't going to be achieved and you can take a different route in life and still take pride in it. There's moments of regret, but at the same time, they accept that they were missing something and they don't want to disrespect those that they consider geniuses. Each of the main cast is kind of tied to one of the older characters like that. The thing is, Toshiki and Himeko are basically the same character, but she just has a way more experience, where they're not the most talented and have people that are just better than them completely. So they keep going and making something even better each time to eventually reach what others consider like, oh, this is a genius level art, sacrificing something along the way each time just to make it better, and they consider it worth it. It's a plot thread in a couple of routes where the other side characters see what Himeko is trying to do and how she's trying to lead the new cast, and they're like, this is fucked up, what the fuck are you doing? But she says like it's up to them if they want to go through with it, and if they end up surviving just like trials and trauma shit, then becomes something amazing. It's the whole burn yourself inside out and show the world that what you can ultimately do. Kind of like the 8 inner gates thing from like Naruto and stuff like that. Sure, you'll be the strongest for like a moment or for a while, but is it worth it? And will people even remember your work in a while? It's like, who knows? Overall, I think the title could have been a lot better if it focused on like one of their plots and just focusing on the theme. Each route hits the theme even if only for a few minutes, but it doesn't really feel the same. You can say it's like Kirikita where the main theme is there and each route but it's muddled to make the main route more impactful. But I'd say Kirikita lands it a lot better. Like, if every route was scrapped and you just have like a more focused kinetic route for Erena, it'd be a better title. You just get the drama here and there, and each of their characters could have been used as like stepping stones for Toshiki, where he keeps throwing what he values away to perfect his art further until he destroys himself in the process. It would be pretty cool. The only one left would be like the remaining genius Erena, and she'd just be staying like as an ongoing goalpost for him. It'd tie well with what Himiko's about. It can tie into Kiriha and Aisa is fine, but it piss off the audience so much. It'd be so shit for marketing, but a subset of fans would love it. It's like if Sadaguchi had complete control. I feel like he would have done something like this, like, fuck it, it's time for peak. I don't care if I kill the whole cast, if it would be cool about it. I'm giving this a 7. It'd be in the lower end without the alternate ending. If it was just the first 4 chapters, I'd probably be like very biased and give it a 9. Otherwise, it's like an 8. It's written and paced really well. Like, if you looked at it just as a slice of life title, it's a 9 is totally valid. I think the final route was rushed, but I guess I can say the same thing for all those routes. But it's worse in the sense that at least the rest could have been excused for, like, well, a lot of their stuff was already being handled in the common route and there's not enough left to handle, right? In the true route, I was like, no, you had a lot of things to burn through and it's super rushed. Like, all right, what happened? The best part of the final route wasn't even about Aisa, but more that Himiko's way of thinking was finally cracking under pressure. It finally dawned on her that there's a limit to what you should do and what you should go through, and she's getting scared and seeing them as freaks of nature at that point. It's like some mad scientist being terrified of the results of his like magnum opus, like, holy, what did I do? And it's like, oh my god, what have I created? It's a freak. You're a fucking freak. And it's a small part of the route, but it's super devastating for her because now there's this realm that she can never enter even if she throws everything away. It's like, there's nothing I can do to get into that stupid zone that they're in. Holy shit, this is even worse than who else they're competing with. The spoilers will be all about the true route and the alternate ending. So throughout the whole title, you can see that something was going on with Aisa. And like, I'm pretty sure they were not trying to hide it. It was almost to the level that Aisa should have like a sign like, hey, I'm dying on her. It's either her not being around or her going to the hospital to visit someone. It's like, no, you're not. It's fucking you, right? In every route, she's leaving to work with Tengenji. She's the writer that Himeko aspires to beat. So Himeko and Tengenji and the rest of the side cast all went to the same school like the main cast is. It's like considered the second iteration. So the side cast is mapped to the main one. Toshiki and Himeko are a match, and like Aisa and Tengenji is another one. Erena technically also matches with Tengenji. It's even a better match with it in terms of like being a genius, but she also goes with her sister. Really, Erena is pretty malleable outside of like matching with Himeko. It's one of those things where Aisa can also be considered like Aisa is Himeko and Tengenji together, which is like, holy shit, this is a bad match. One of the funny things is Toshiki didn't know Aisa's alias was Sakura, this author that already had like best-selling of the year novels, right? And that's because how she writes became totally different, where she used to write like stories with happy endings, everything was good, and that all completely stopped. And it was because she was jealous of her own characters. Like, she never got together with Toshiki when she was younger, and now she has this terminal illness, and she's like, why the hell can't I be happy? I don't want to see anything be happy. Fuck you, my own characters, you're all gonna get bad endings. So all of her stories are bittersweet or depressing, and to me it's funny, but it's like, you can understand what her thought process is. Anyway, while the offer to work with Tengenji was true, I doubt it ever came to be, maybe in just one route. Generally, she gives advice when called, and somehow she's always awake and free to talk. The whole thing is that she's giving up and she's just living her last bit of life that she still has before dying, but Toshiki convinces her to do her final work with him because that's like the thing from chapter 4, thus supposedly like burning up her remaining time further. By the end, they mentioned there's a procedure to save her, but it's risky and the chances get worse the longer she waits. She eventually gives in, but only after they finish their work, and most of the cast is rightfully going like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Especially to Aisa and Toshiki. And Toshiki, while dying inside and being super depressed, completely respects her decision because he'd do the same thing. Their art is more important than their lives, and they just be makers otherwise. Like, nah, I'm gonna fuck you makers, I'm gonna be creator. It's very dumb. At this point, even Himeko is like, what the fuck is this bullshit? And when she's normally like the evil one going, yeah, burn everything for the art, be the masterpiece, it's going to be the best. But now Aisa, who was already considered a genius, is now doing something even she wouldn't consider doing, and what she's like, what the fuck is this? She's going even further than the realm that Tengenji resides in. They could have gone further with Himeko and her breaking apart with how wide the gap has become and how she's no longer even like a contestant on becoming the best at this point. It's like, before all she had to compete with was Tengenji. Now it's like, now this fucker over here is killing herself to do shit. What can I do? So by the end, Aisa does die. Toshiki still hears her in his head, and the whole thing is all of his works are no longer under his name, but under the name that they created together. So it's him walking along, getting new inspiration and continuing to write. And this is considered the good ending in the way that they created their magnum opus and she left the world with the largest bang she could ever do. And like, I'm actually a sucker for like sad endings, but this one felt forced. And it's like they could do nothing about it, because if they saved her, it'd also be forced. Like, well, wow, right? It's just how they handled it was not great. So that's why in the alternate ending, it's called the bad end, even though she survives. She lost any spark in her to write anything new. And to her, that's basically her being dead anyways, but now she has to continue living with this affliction. It's like, ah, this sucks, right? But Toshiki forces her to write for this contest, and the reward is if she wins, she can quit, because if she still wins without any passion, then writing is kind of fucked up and she doesn't want to be any part of it anymore. And if Toshiki wins, he says she still doesn't have to write, but she has to find something else to be passionate about, and then he'll support her for it. Because his whole thing is that he'd drop her ass if you're not giving it your all. He's kind of an asshole like that. Like in a couple of the other routes, he's like, hey, I love that you're passionate about doing X, not you specifically. And they just laugh about it. It's like, this is kind of fucked up, man, but also I want to keep doing this thing, so it works out. I'll keep working on it because that's what you love. And you know, it's like, all right, to me, I'm like, that's some fucking toxic shit, but I understand he's weird mentally like that. Anyway, Aisa's surprised about that, but she accepts, but ultimately loses. And not just that she lost to Toshiki in the contest, her name was nowhere to be seen. She got destroyed. And at that point, she's completely frustrated. She still doesn't have her spark back, and there's no ideas popping into her mind either, but she decides to keep on struggling because being Toshiki's rival is a spot she won't let anybody else have. It's a way better ending to the plot, because while the theme is about throwing everything into the flames to make your best work yet, it kind of defeats the point when it becomes their final work and no longer be able to one-up themselves again. It's like, what the fuck is this? Sure, you can be at the top for like maybe a few years, but who's to say you won't be forgotten soon anyway? Hell, Toshiki's masterpiece was overtaken in like a few months. He got fucked, and that's why he got his whole trauma thing. It's like, this could just be happening the same thing with this work. It's like, it makes no sense. So calling it a bad end is more to just not be obvious about what's happening or what's it about. Otherwise, I think it's an awful name for the ending. There's probably some German word that exactly explains the feeling for it, but it can just be considered like, oh, this is the struggling rival's end, or something like rivals evermore, or some fancy bullshit. Really, the text for the choice could have been like just a question mark if it really wants to be ambiguous or secretive of what it's about. But otherwise, I think the true route ending was kind of dumb. Not in the sense like this will never work, I just don't think it was written well enough to be impactful. It's just like, oh, alright, I guess that's what you're going for. It's like the same thing with the music is good ending. It's the good ending, right? And I'm still like, I see what you're going for. It is not impactful. It should have been more to it. Where the bad ending wasn't really impactful. So I'm like, how is the good, happy ending the worst one out of the four? While I was making the video for this, I completely forgot about going further about Erena, and I talked about it before. Erena is a goofball that wants to improve her H scenes, but she's horrendous at it and she's completely monotone. But on the other hand, she's also like colorless, and that's the alias for the person that completely nuked Toshiki's best work a couple months, like in a few months, right? On the other hand, she's also colorless, the alias of the person that completely nuked Toshiki's best work like a few months after he pushed it out. Erena is a beast that can write something in a day where others will take like weeks to do. Her route is about taking over Aisa's part of the cast, where Aisa supposedly leaves to work with Tengenji, but already handled most of everything with Toshiki about their like collab project, the end title under like Erika's company. Erika is Erena's older sister, who's one of the side casts, right? Anyways, what she wrote completely outclasses Toshiki's part of the cast again, so the dude is going crazy trying to make his part better and completely scrapping anything he's done because it's never good enough. And Himeko's all for this because she sees herself in him, and if he can get past that hurdle, he'll become one of his own like kind of genius, and she's like, holy shit, this is the best, right? But from what I remember, it's to the point that Erena wants to quit because she's losing what she finally got, because she wants some normalcy in her life, or rather like some color, right? Because there's no point in all this if Toshiki is basically burning himself out and running on fumes every day. But he doesn't want that, and he gets some advice about not trying to be better than her, but just to write with his own strengths, because he does make his characters rather charming. It's just that the plot falls short compared to colorless. So long story short, they continue writing and Toshiki is still not at her level, but he knows he's getting better. So while they're together and Erena gets what she wants in this relationship, Toshiki also gets like a goalpost that's constantly getting better as well. Basically, she becomes his muse, and that's all he really can ask for. So it's like, hey, I got a wife, or I think it's fiance at that point, and a muse at the same time. This is amazing. And that's about it for this one.